For me, it took a long time to really break that busyness cycle and realize that busy is not the same thing as productive or successful or fulfilled, and really look to see what was I craving? What would that time freedom look like for me? So take a moment and really think about that right now. What is time freedom for you?
Welcome to The Way of the Muse, a podcast for women who want to create richness in every area of their lives, from business and career to lifestyle, relationships, family, purpose, and fulfillment. I'm Gigi Sage.
And I'm Makena Sage. We're a mother-daughter coaching team, and combined, we've spent over 4 decades helping people create their best and most fully expressed lives. If you're ready to step into your bigger dreams with ease, fun, and flow, you're in the right place. Let's get into the episode.
Hello, everyone. This is Makena, and I am coming to you with an episode today, solo episode on time freedom, how to break free of the busyness cycle. So this is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart because I spent a lot of years, a lot of my life really, trapped in what I would call the busyness cycle, just so go, 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 go. And you've probably heard me talk about this on the podcast before, if you're a frequent listener. But it really was my reality. And I felt like my calendar ran me instead of me running it. And I was often tired. I was often overwhelmed, overcommitted. And I've made a huge change in this over the last few years. And it's something that I love to share with other people. In fact, we just did a session on this with our mastermind, the Wealthy World Changers Mastermind that we run, and did a deep dive session where we really workshopped this with the women. And so we're bringing a light version of this topic to you. It's still going to be a lot of great content today, but just really helping you see, how can you break free of that feeling of just being constantly busy, but not necessarily having the freedom or the focus that you want. So how can you move the things forward that you need and want to move forward in your life without just being constantly in the doing? So today I'm going to share some of the key shifts that have helped me. And I do ask, if you find this episode valuable, one of our big asks is always, please, please, please think of someone you can share it with. That means so much to us. It's the way, we don't do any marketing for this podcast or anything like that. So if there's someone in your life who, could benefit from a little less busyness or a little more focus and feeling of control over their life and their calendar, please share this with them. It means the world to us when you do that. All right, let's dive into what is time freedom. That's where I want to begin today, because time freedom, I think it's not really about having a completely open calendar. Most of us, if we had a completely empty calendar, it wouldn't actually be as exciting or nice as we think it would be. It might be nice for a short time, like when we go on vacation or something like that. But usually people actually start to get a little bored if their calendar is completely open and they feel a little directionless or purposeless. And I did listen to an episode. I'm trying to think what podcast it was on. I believe it was on the Glennon Doyle podcast recently about time, and a bit of a different angle than we're taking today. But there was a researcher on there that talked about this from Harvard. And she said, it's really not about having just all this open space on your calendar. In fact, there's sort of declining returns of having all this extra time. It's really about having a certain amount of time, free time. And then it's also just having time for what matters, right? What matters to you. That might be rest. That might be creativity. That might be spending time with your loved ones. What are those things that if you had more time available, or even just taking care of yourself more? So what would you use that time for? I think that's a really great place to start to think about that. What is time freedom for you? Because otherwise we can fill every moment and we can still feel unfulfilled, right? If it's all kind of admin and reactive obligations or things that don't really move us forward, or we're working a lot more than we want to be. But even if we fill our calendar with a lot of personal things, sometimes that can feel unfulfilling because it's like we're just busy, busy, busy all the time. So for me, it took a long time to really break that busyness cycle and realize that busy is not the same thing as productive or successful or fulfilled, and really look to see, like, what was I craving? What would that time freedom look like for me? So take a moment and really think about that right now. What is time freedom for you? And this is something that's going to evolve. It's going to be different at different times in your life, different seasons in your life, which we're going to talk about in just a moment. But it's like right now, if you had more time freedom, what are you craving? How do you want to spend that time? Let's talk a little bit about seasons. So seasons are one of the ways that, Gigi really taught me to think about my life in seasons, and it's been really, really supportive for me. So this is something we often share with our clients, which is a season in your life is a time in your life that's kind of focused around something in particular. And of course, you're going to have a lot of different things going on in your life at any given time. But a season is like, this is one of the big focuses that's kind of taking up a lot of your time and your energy and your attention in a given period. And, there's no set amount of time that a season is, but let's say that on average, it might be between 1 month and maybe 6 months maximum. And so I like to think in terms of usually a business or professional season, like what's the business or professional season I'm in right now? And then what personal season am I in right now? Because usually there'll be kind of one main season for each. And this could be, I'm in a season of a lot of travel, personally, or I'm in a season of really working out to be a consistent part of my life. And that's a personal one. Or in business, you might be in a season of sales and really focused on outreach and sales and growing your revenue in the business. Or you might be in a more operational season where business and revenue are where you want them to be, but now you really want to work on your systems and your back end in your business. So you want to really look at what is the season of life you're in right now. And again, choose one business or professional season and one personal. And you might go, well, that's impossible. I have so many different things going on. And that may be true, but I say that there's times where other things in your life or your career can kind of go on what I call maintenance mode. So maintenance mode is you're still moving them forward, you're still working on them, but they're not taking up that same level of time and energy and attention that the season you're in is taking up right now. And sometimes we get to choose the season we're in, and sometimes we don't. So sometimes, there's a family crisis going on, for example, and you might have to just attend to that crisis, and that may be the personal season you're in, whether you like it or not, but it is what's here right now. And sometimes we just get to surrender to that. And sometimes by identifying that, okay, this is where I'm at, we can relax into that and stop resisting it. And that makes everything go so much more smoothly. So right now, for example, for me, I'm in the home stretch of preparing for baby and maternity leave. And so that means that I'm in a season of, completing projects at work and pre-recording podcast episodes and doing a lot of these things so that I can really be present for the season that's coming of new motherhood. So that's an example of, I'm in one season right now, which is sort of the prep mode, especially on the business side of things. I've already prepped most things personally. And then I'm going into a season of new motherhood personally and kind of a break from the work side of things for a little while. And so that's a big season shift that's coming up, and I'm very aware of that change that's coming. So the question or the reflection I'm inviting here for you is, what season are you in right now? Are you clear on what that is, personally and professionally? And then once you see what that is your calendar or your focuses or the way you're spending your time, is it reflecting that, or is it out of alignment somehow? Are you maybe kind of resisting it, like I said, or not giving it the time and attention it needs to really move it forward so that you can shift into a different season when the time is right? So just starting to think about your life this way can create a lot of clarity, I would say, right? Like, okay, this is just the season I'm in, and really choosing that and owning that. The next thing I want to talk about is being reactive versus proactive. And this kind of thread goes through the entire topic today, which is, for me, a big shift, in my approach to time, was realizing how often I was being reactive with my time instead of proactive. So being reactive is when you're just responding to everything as it comes. And, you might be scheduling things all over the place. You might be working around everyone else's availability, or saying yes to things automatically if you're someone that tends to overcommit. And being proactive means actually deciding or choosing, right? We did a podcast episode on that a couple weeks ago, the power of decision, and deciding what would actually work best for me, and then shaping your time and the flow and the rhythm of your days and weeks around what works for you and around what matters most to you at this time. So there's a lot I could say about reactive versus proactive, but the first question is just, am I being reactive or proactive most of the time? And you can kind of answer that question mentally for yourself. And then I'm guessing, if you have some reactivity going on, that you'd love to see, how can I shift that to be more proactive, to be more the one who's in the driver's seat. Again, that you are at the source of your rhythm and your flow and your calendar instead of it running you. So one simple tool around this, there's many, many things that I could teach, and you may have heard this one before or maybe not, but a simple tool is theming your days. Theming your days. So this really helped me move from reactive mode to much more proactive in my days and my weeks. So theming your days just means grouping similar activities together into certain days of the week instead of scattering them everywhere. Now, this is going to be most feasible if you have your own business or you have some flexibility in your work or your calendar. Then you're going to have the most ability to do this, but you'd be surprised, even if you're working in a job. I've had people who really, with some forethought, can start to shift their calendar, even if you have to shift it a few weeks out from now and start there. Like, you can't really shift anything in the next 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks. This is true for entrepreneurs too, is often there's a delay. I find is that you may not be able to put these principles into place tomorrow, right? It may be that you need to look at your calendar and go, okay, 3 or 4 weeks from now, I can start to try some of these things on. And then just know that it's going to be a trial and error process. You're going to have to, try one way, see how it goes, see what worked and what didn't work, and then make some shifts accordingly, because you are completely unique. The way you work is unique. Your business or career is unique, or your schedule. So really to just relax around that I'm not saying there's one right way to do this, or it has to all happen tomorrow, or you're failing. These are tools to just start to baby step your way into, but you'll be amazed after 6 months or something like that, if you really keep playing with this and tweaking and refining, how much more in control you're going to feel, how much more relaxed you're going to feel. So again, take this one step at a time, and you may need to sort of book the changes a few weeks out, test them for a week or two, and then keep tweaking as you go. So theming your days, I need a breathing break here. My reduced lung capacity I'm always talking about on the podcast these days. Looking forward to soon being able to fully breathe again when baby Sienna arrives. Let's all just take a deep breath together. All right. So theming your days just means grouping similar activities together into certain days. So I'm going to share my theme days as they stand right now. This is something that's evolved over the years, but as an entrepreneur, this is what I found really works for me. So Mondays for me are usually team calls and what I call admin or minor tasks. So usually this is the day that Gigi and I have a long call. We might record podcast episodes on this day. We talk about things going on in the business. We work on projects together. So because we don't live in the same city, we need a long sort of call, usually on most weeks. So that call can be anywhere from 2 to 4 hours for us because we're recording podcasts and doing different things. So that's usually a Monday call. And then we have a virtual team as well. And so if I need to do calls with that team or check on their work, get back to them on things, give them feedback, then Monday is my main day to do that. Now, if there's overflow, if there's other little, what I call minor tasks, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment, that need to happen, then Mondays is usually a good day for that as well. So it's sort of my day to just be working in the business and, just getting things done that need to be done to continue moving our business forward that aren't necessarily client facing or generating new business. So it's more the back end sort of admin, operations, and sometimes recording. So that's my Mondays. Tuesdays are typically client sessions. So I group most of my coaching onto Tuesdays. This is when we have our Wealthy World Changers Mastermind call. This is when, we do one-on-one sessions with our clients, or at least I do. My Gigi has a little bit of a different schedule, but it is one of her main coaching days as well. So we really group it in that way. And then sometimes if there's overflow, then we'll go to another day of the week, usually Wednesday. So if we need more time for calls, then those would happen on Wednesdays. So notice we're not scheduling calls as much as possible. We're not scheduling them all throughout the week with our clients or with prospects. We are really grouping them into Tuesdays and sometimes Wednesdays. And that really helps us to not be pulled in a lot of different directions. Calls are amazing. They're the, lifeblood of our business, is working with our clients in that way. But it's also a certain kind of energy and focus, and it can distract from other kinds of projects. And so really grouping those together allows us to focus on other things in other parts of the week. So Wednesdays is kind of a flex day. As I mentioned, that might be more client sessions. It might be calls with potential clients if someone's interested in working with us, or it might be, deep work on a project if I don't have other things going on that day. So I kind of look each week and go, what does Wednesday need to be for this week? So that's a flex day. And then Thursdays and Fridays for me are typically what I call deep work days. So deep work days we're going to talk about in a moment, but really getting in there and moving projects forward that need a lot of time, energy, focus with minimal task switching. Or sometimes one of these days, Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday, will also become like an errand or appointment day. So if I have a lot of errands I need to run, I have, doctor's appointments or different things going on, body work, then I would, instead of just, again, scheduling those throughout the week, which sometimes I do, I might do that at the end of my days, or I'd say, let me take one day this week. Let's say it's Thursday, and I'm going to put all my appointments in one day. So really, again, focusing, theming that day can be really supportive. So I'm not just running around all over the place on different days. So that's a little bit of my flow of how I theme my days. And these are just ideas. You want to really look and see, this isn't rigid, it's really flexible. what would be theme days that you would need or want. So you might pick one day of the week that you try to really make your calls and meetings day. So you're not doing Zoom calls all over the week. A lot of us work from home these days, or even if you're meeting people in person, then you have one day that you go out and you meet people in person. You want to group errands and appointments together as much as possible. Unless, again, you're booking them sort of at the end of your day. Maybe that works for you, but otherwise, can you do one day a week where you run certain errands or do appointments? So really ask yourself, what could work for me here? And where could you try theming your days? Even 1 or 2 days of your week would be a huge, huge, huge start. Okay, so we've covered seasons, we've covered theme days as a way to be less reactive and more proactive. Next, I want to talk about something that was a huge aha for a lot of our women in our mastermind, which is a differentiation between different types of tasks that might end up on your to-do list or different kinds of projects. So this has been a big shift for me, is realizing that not all tasks are equal and that actually different kinds of work uses different parts of the brain. So I like to call this deep work and minor tasks. These are the two different sort of buckets that I put things into on my to-do list. So deep work would be big, meaningful, focus-heavy tasks that move things forward. Things that need a lot of brain power. They need you to really get into a zone and focus. Or sometimes this is also things that you've just been putting off and you need to put it in the deep work category because it's you just keep putting it off. Minor tasks tends to be, we might put off minor tasks as well, but tends to be more admin type things or quick projects. Like I need to get feedback on this thing back to someone. I need to reply to this email. I need to make this phone call. So those would be minor tasks that take probably 30 minutes or less, or maybe an hour or less to do each one. And you don't need to get into a super focused deep zone to do them necessarily. They can sort of be sprinkled throughout your week or, they just don't take that same level of deep focus to do them. So why this is important to sort of group your to-dos into these two categories, deep work and minor tasks, is that otherwise minor tasks are going to just fill up your day. Checking emails, right? Responding to things, being in that reactive mode, or having your appointments and then in between appointments, just sort of doing little things that you can get done. It's so easy to spend all of our time on these quick little tasks and then wonder, why can I never seem to move the big projects forward? So I want to share a couple of statistics around this because I want to talk about task switching. And you may have heard this before, but it's really, the research is profound on this, on just how much focus we lose when we switch from task to task. And for me, especially if I'm trying to do deep work. So studies have found that every time we switch tasks, it can take up to 25 minutes to get fully back into focus. And that's from the American Psychological Association. So think about that. You're working on one thing, you switch to something else, you get distracted, you check your email. It can take you up to 25 minutes to just reorient yourself and get back to what you're supposed to be working on. That's very, very common. Another study found that office workers were interrupted about every 11 minutes and that it takes 23 minutes on average for them to recover. So there's no time for them to recover. They're getting distracted by notifications, by people asking for things from them. And then, it takes them a really long time to get back into things. So think about how effective can you be if you have those kinds of interruptions going on. Your kids come into the room, your phone dings, you get an email that distracts you. So these are huge, huge, huge losses in productivity. And then frequent task switching doesn't just waste time, it actually also increases your stress and leads to more mistakes. So all of this is research backed, and there's a lot of other statistics out there. But I wanted to share that because when we're talking about deep work, especially, minor tasks to me don't take as much focus. And so the task switching isn't as big of a deal. It can still definitely be a detriment and can distract you. So you want to still try to utilize some of the same principles. But for deep work, especially, you want to guard that with everything you have and really minimize distractions, because otherwise we lose so much productivity and we don't move these things forward that are really important to us. So I'm very intentional these days about blocking deep work sessions. And I learned this when I was in marketing, when I had my marketing business before I became a coach 7 years ago. I was in online marketing and copywriting and consulting, and I did a lot of writing projects. So I did that for 6 years, and I had to learn how to focus, how to really sit down and get these big writing projects done. We did not have AI then. I did not have anything helping me. I was just sitting down from scratch and writing pages and emails and all kinds of things. And so I learned that I had to have these deep work times, these times when I did not look at notifications. For me, I really learned that starting first thing in the morning was important. In fact, sometimes if I have a really big deep work project to do, I work from home, I won't even get up and shower. I will get up, have coffee or, a snack, some breakfast, and just kind of roll out of bed and get right onto my laptop, which might sound crazy, but when you really look at the research and the science, it's not that crazy in terms of if we let ourselves get distracted. And there's a lot more I could share about this, but I don't have this, stats and the science in front of me. But if we let ourselves get distracted, especially by social media, by our phones, by anything that sort of creates, let's say, certain hormonal triggers in the brain, then it becomes very difficult to get in and focus on other things. So there is something to this. And, you can shower if you want to, or you might not be a morning person. I'm not really a morning person, which is what's surprising about this. So I'm not saying 7 in the morning. I'm saying starting by 9 or 10, but not working on anything else first, not checking emails, not checking social media, not replying to text messages, nothing like that. Just really getting immediately into the hardest thing, the biggest project that I need to move forward, and getting a solid, let's say, hour to 3 hours in before I look at anything else. So my team will know a lot of the time I'm in a deep work zone and I'm not going to reply right away. So you can have do not disturb on your phone where only, your favorites can get through if it's really an emergency, but really, really turning off the ringer if you can, only checking it periodically. So this is what's worked for me. So I really like to, if I have big projects to move forward, then just make sure that, at least 1 to 2 days a week, I have a solid block of hours, anywhere from 3 to 5 hours, where I can do deep work. And again, I may need a break partway through that, lunch break, or, I'm going to take a break and look at some notifications or something, but I'm very careful not to let myself get pulled too far in a different direction because I need to get back into that deep work. So protect your deep work time. That's the big takeaway here. Start scheduling this in, look at what are the bigger projects you want to move forward, and really take that time. Don't let yourself task switch. Put your phone on do not disturb, limit your notifications, turn off the ringer. Everything can wait 3 hours. The world is not going to fall apart for most of us if we take that time. And you'll be amazed at how much you start to get done and what you start to move forward. So this is one of my biggest tips for people in terms of productivity. Then minor tasks, you can still have minor tasks that you need to do, but those are things, again, you can fit in around other stuff throughout your week, or you can have, certain times a day, you're doing things like checking email. I tell people, set an alarm on your phone. If you really can't stick to anything around this, set an alarm on your phone to go off when you're going to start checking your email each day at whatever time, 1 o'clock or noon, set another alarm to go off 30 minutes later. And that's your window to check notifications, whether that's email, WhatsApp, text, whatever. Get done as much as you can get done and then stop. And then maybe you need another window at the end of the day, or maybe you need to do this 3 times a day, but really use alarms on your phone if you have to like train yourself to not just be getting sucked into that anytime, a notification pops up. Okay. So a couple of other resources and tools I wanted to share with you. If social media is a big distraction for you, I've started using an app I really like called Be Present. And so it actually limits your time on whatever apps you ask it to. And so it'll, like I do 5 minutes at a time if I want to get on social media, up to 5 minutes at a time, and only so many times per day. And so it'll tell me we're going to close the app in 30 seconds. And then it'll only let me open it that many times per day that I said. Of course, you can override it, but it just really makes you think twice about, do I really need to get in and scroll right now? Or do I really need to get in and do this right now? So that's been really, really helpful for me. There's other things. There's a device called the Brick that I've heard of that a lot of people really love that does something similar. So you can look into different options there. Hugely effective. And one of my clients that I shared this with got the app, and I haven't seen this part, but she said basically it told her she was going to spend 20 years of her life on her phone or something, or on social media based on her current usage. And she was like, holy what? And so she started using the app to cut down on that dramatically. So it's really true. We spend a lot of time on our phones, most of us. And so if that is something that's true for you, then I highly recommend checking out one of these apps or devices. And then if you're curious about why these apps and platforms are so good at pulling us in, and just the psychology behind this, and I mentioned some of the hormones that get released. We know about dopamine. A lot of people talk about that, but there's actually a lot more than that going on. I listened to a Mel Robbins podcast episode recently called Before You Waste Time. Listen to this. So we'll link that in the show notes. But in it, she interviews a Harvard researcher about how these tools are literally designed to hijack our attention. And it's super eye-opening. It really taught me a lot and gave me kind of the scientific basis for some of these things I was feeling anyway. So highly recommend listening to that. Okay. In the home stretch here, we've talked about a lot. Even if you just take one of the things we've talked about today so far, you're going to see big, big changes. But I do want to share some really simple supporting strategies, some small tips that have made a big difference for me. So one thing is, if you're someone who tends to book yourself very solid, then start by taking one full day per week where you don't book anything. For Sunny and I, my partner and I, this used to be Sundays, then it became Saturdays for a while. So, we might see a friend or something like that, but most of the time we would try to not have obligations, only fun things we might do on that day, and really to leave it open to see how do we feel that day. So that's a really great starting point for some of you who are chronically busy, is to just have one unbooked day per week, one open day per week. We called this slow Sundays or slow Saturdays. Okay. The next thing is to take a real lunch break in your day. If you're someone like I used to be who did not take breaks in my day, then I would start by taking 20 to 30 minutes, blocking it on my calendar and actually stopping work, having my food, sitting there. And for me, I was like, what would really help me unplug and unwind during this time? And so I started reading a fiction book while I would eat my lunch, because that's one of my biggest nourishers. It's one of the things that helps me unwind. So give my brain a break, really, that I'm not just engaged in thinking about work the whole time I'm eating lunch. I would sit there and read that fiction book for 20 minutes or 30 minutes as I would eat my lunch. So that was a huge change for me, giving my thinking a break, my brain a break in the middle of the day. And I was so much more productive the rest of the day as a result. So think about that. How can you get that break? And then I also started putting leave open blocks on my calendar. So if I noticed a day was getting really busy, let's say with calls, if I had 6 hours of calls booked, then I would block in the rest of my day and just say leave open. on the other blocks. That way nothing would get accidentally scheduled there. And this just allowed me to avoid overbooking myself. And sometimes those leave open blocks, I would end up working on something. Sometimes I would end up taking a little break. It just depended on the day and the flow and how I was feeling. But it started helping me not block every minute of every day, was to put certain blocks of time in if I noticed things getting busy, where I said, leave this open. Not necessarily for work or deep work or something like that, but just to see in the flow of my day, what did I need that time for? Because otherwise, have you ever had one of those days where you're just back to back to back to back, let's say on meetings, and you're just exhausted by the end of the day? You haven't had a moment to breathe, to take a break, to go to the bathroom, and whatever it is for you, right? So leave open blocks can be really, really helpful. Another little tip is to wait 24 hours before you commit to anything new. This could be personal or professional. If you are an overcommitter, which again, I used to be, then this rule can save you so much stress. You can just tell people, hey, I'm a maybe to this. It sounds really great, but I have a rule of thumb that I wait 24 hours before I commit one way or the other. Can I let you know tomorrow? And most people are going to be fine with that, right? So it just gives you a moment to take a beat, to take a breath, which we'll do again here together because I'm out of breath again. So just waiting 24 hours, taking that pause, giving yourself that space. We always tell our clients, if they're working with us in, let's say, our mastermind where they have voice note coaching with us, like reach out to us and, run it by us before you say yes to something new. And just having that external sounding board can be really helpful for some people. But even if it's just time for you to really sit with something and see, is this in my highest good right now? Am I just filling my calendar with more? Can I really give this my all right now without being stressed? These are some of the questions you might ask yourself. So 24-hour rule before taking on any new commitments is a huge one. And then the final one is to respect your natural productivity rhythm. So I talked about, like for me, deep work blocks being first thing in the morning, but I have a particular client in mind. She is not effective in the morning. Even if she gives herself time and it's not super early, she just doesn't get into her groove until afternoon most of the time. So she knows that about herself. And she tends to take her mornings more for relaxation or being with, getting her kids off to school. And then maybe it's other types of things she needs to do, or she's just going out in the mornings, whatever it is. And then she knows if she sits down around after lunchtime and she really goes for focusing, and then she's so much more energy, so much more productivity. This is true for me, by the way, with working out. I am not a morning workout person at all. My body's just not awake in the morning. And even if I'm up and I'm doing things, it just does not want to move. So I'm a late afternoon workout person, like 4 p.m., 5 p.m. is kind of my ideal. So I just know that about myself and I organize my calendar accordingly. So what is your natural rhythm? When are you the most productive? When do you work out the most effectively? And really, as much as possible, can you start to organize your flow, your rhythm around that? So lots of information today. I want you to just pick one or two things. So just think about, reflect back. Out of everything we've talked about today, what are one or two that stick out to you that you could start to experiment with? And do that over the next 30 days, right? You might need to start, as mentioned, a couple weeks out from now. Choose one or two, apply it, experiment with it, see what works, let go of anything that doesn't work for you, and then you can always come back and try another one. Or you might write them all down for yourself and then just kind of go through them one by one. So those are my tips on breaking free of the busyness and really calendaring and setting things up in such a way that you start to really have a rhythm and be proactive instead of reactive. There's so much more I could talk about with, freeing up time and space, but these are the more tangible, tactical tips that we talked about today. So thank you again for listening. And Please, please, please share this with someone that you know that would get value from it. And we will see you in a future podcast episode. See you then.
That's our episode for today, but let's not make it the end of our love story. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and think of some women in your life you'd love to share it with. And if you want to learn more about our events and programs, visit wayofthemuse.com. See you next time.